An endangered species. Why you should care and what you can do. Hello everyone, my name is Whitney Green and I'm a college student at Hardin-Simmons University. I just finished taking a life science course where I learned about all sorts of things from cells to ecosystems and biodiversity. So one thing that really made an impression on me was a chapter about conservation biology. What I discovered was that some of what I would have considered as insignificant species, like a spider, like why do they even exist, actually play a really big role in the overall ecosystem. So, for the end of our semester, we were asked to create a video to promote and bring awareness to an endangered species. I decided I'm going to pick something, cute and fluffy that everyone would want to save. Well, that really didn't work out, but I'm kind of glad it didn't. So I chose to do a species I didn't really know anything about, and at first kind of freaked me out. But I hope by the end of the video, you will find the information interesting and will be willing to do what you can to protect these vital creatures. I want to start off by saying that none of the images or information in this video, except for the picture of myself, are my own. I am simply borrowing this information to use as an educational tool to help bring awareness to an endangered species. Links to credits and information will be provided at the end of this video. That's right, I'm going to be talking about bats. There are a lot of misconceptions about these creatures, and I will be touching on those shortly. So, I just want to kind of lay out what I'm going to be going over in the next few minutes. I'm going to be talking about a specific species of bat. I will be then talking about what they are listed as both nationally and at state level. I'll be talking about the history of bats, their habitat, how they're being preserved, and what you can do to help. There are over 1,300 different species of bats, 33 different species just alone in Texas. I will be specifically talking about the Mexican or greater long-nosed bat. It was first discovered in the U.S. in 1937. The bat can range from 2.75 to 3.75 inches in length. It feeds on agave nectar and pollen, and it is the main pollinator for several agave plants. It's also distinguished by, as you can tell in the picture, it has a little horned nose. It's closely related to the lesser-nosed long-nosed bat and the long-tongued Mexican bat. At a national level, it is listed as endangered since 1988. Texas and New Mexico also listed it as endangered in 1988, and it has been listed in Mexico as endangered. The last population that was taken was in 1971. It was 8,095, and that was in Big Bend, Texas. This map kind of shows the three bats. These three bats are closely related. The yellow color is the Mexican long-nosed bat, which is mainly what I'm going to be talking about in this video. It's the one that is endangered. The blue, the lesser long-nosed bat, used to be threatened, but it has been taken off the list. And then you can see the purple is the area which the Mexican long-tongued bat can be found. So a little bit about, bats' history. So we know that bats are feared, but they're feared they're feared for a lot of things that actually are just not true. But in the United States, they are feared. But one idea is that bats are, they suck our blood. That's where vampires come from, that whole idea. But there are actually only 3 species of bats that, out of, 1,300, that feed on blood. And actually only one of those actually feeds on mammals. Bats are actually not blind. They are considered mammals and not rodents. They're actually more closely related to us than they are rodents. They do migrate, kind of like birds. In the winter, they go down towards central Mexico, but then in the spring and summer, they come up to North Mexico and areas of Texas. A lot about these bats is still unknown. A little bit about their habitat. They prefer higher, cooler places in parts of New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico. For day roosting, the bats depend on cool caves, crevices, abandoned mines, tunnels, and old buildings. The males and females they kind of do segregate. They only come together twice a year to mate. The female bats prefer to be more up north, where the male bats tend to stay down in central Mexico. There's actually only been one breeding site that is known to exist for this specific species. In Texas, these bats have been mostly studied in the Big Bend National Park. There are a couple of reasons why they're endangered, but their population is declining. Two of those reasons are roosting and food shortages. Their roosting sites are being destroyed or disturbed, especially if they're in things like old buildings, certain parts of forest that are being taken down or changed into something else. This is especially common in Mexico, where there's not a lot of there's not right now. There's not a lot of effort to try to preserve their roosting sites. Agave plants, when they're being harvested, their bloom is typically cut off before it actually blooms, the part that flowers. And the bats, that's how they get their nectar and their pollen, is from that bloom. And the plant only blooms one time before it dies. So if it's harvested before the plant has actually bloomed, the bat is not getting its main food source. So a few things are being done to try to help preserve these bats, specifically in Texas and New Mexico. Certain sites for their roosting are being guarded and contained, and they're trying to find other sites that maybe we're not aware of that they can help maintain and preserve. Also, one thing that's starting to be done even in Mexico is planting agave along roadways. The harvesting, we use agave for things like tequila, or we even use it to sweeten certain foods, but the bats need additional agave plants to be able to get their main food source. So there are a few things that you can do. One thing is that if you come across a cave, if you're exploring, you come across a cave where you see bats roosting, the best thing to do would be to leave. They're not violent creatures, but they're very sensitive to human disturbances, and they will flee the nest, but and they may not come back to it, but they have very few places that are the best for them to roost. So it's better that if you come across a cave to go ahead and leave. Don't cut or disrupt agave plants if you can help it. Obviously there are ones that are harvested for our use, but just if you see wild agave plants, it's better to leave them because the bats really need them. You can also help by planting and letting agave plants bloom. Another great way you can help is just learning more about bats and just spread the word, because I was really surprised that they're not evil creatures. They're actually not dirty. Even the whole concern about them having rabies, it's not any more common than it would be in any other animal. And they're really important for spreading pollen. So, just learn more about it. Kind of knock down some of the myths that you've been taught about them and just spread the word. The last thing would be is you could donate to organizations that help bats. There are actually several. There's a Texas, there's a national level, there's even a global level. So any of those organizations are great, and they have a lot of educational tools. So here is the list of my works cited in my credits. I have the references to the information, and then the images are by slides. And here's the second one. Well, that is everything. I hope that you found this interesting, and I hope that you will just, even if it's just spreading information to preserve them and to not, harm the bats, it would be really amazing. I thank you for listening to me, and I hope that this was beneficial.